Hello everyone. Today I want to tell you a story about how PipeCash came to be. First I have to explain what PipeCash is and what its story is. So this is my project. This is something I've been working on for half a year now. Ever since the last CoinGeek Week conference. This is pretty much when I started. I started a few days before the conference. I have been working non-stop until now on PipeCash, and it is soon to be released. So I decided that I should make a short video to explain what its story is, how it came to be, and most importantly, what it's gonna be useful for. Okay, so it all started when I heard somebody in the Bitcoin world, but honestly I don't remember who, mention IFTTT. IFTTT is a website. It is a server that helps you automate tasks. It helps you specify well, IFTTT literally means if this, then that. It literally means if this condition is true, do that action. And it's a useful small tool. It can warn you about weather forecasts. For example, if it's gonna rain, it can send you email telling you that it's gonna rain, take your umbrella. Or it can track social media for certain types of links, for certain keywords, stuff like that. Overall, IFTTT is pretty cool. However, it's not serious in any way. IFTTT is meant for small stuff, for small everyday tasks. For example, it can change the wallpaper of your phone. That's great, but not very businessy thing. But I saw big potential in this thing. I saw the potential to automate, to automatically connect different protocols, different programs, and that potential inspired me. So what happened next was I started searching for different tools similar to IFTTT, similar in a way that they also automate if this then that conditions. However, I wanted it to be much more flexible, and I also wanted it to run locally. Why? Because I want Bitcoin stuff. I want it to automate Bitcoin stuff. But it's not easy. I only found one project that fitted my conditions. This project was called Hugin, with double N at the end. The name is pretty cool, actually. The Hugin is the name of one of the ravens of Odin, the Norse mythology god. These ravens were his servants. They were walking around collecting information for Odin, and this name is pretty great for such a framework, because Hugin, the program, it runs locally on your computer, and you have these agents, these pieces of code that go around, collect data from places, act upon this data, and overall it's a great design. Now, before I found Hugin, I had some design in my head which was way more complicated, uselessly complicated. After finding Hugin, I realized just how much simpler it can be. So I decided to extend Hugin. I decided to work on Hugin to improve it a bit and make it its separate own thing. And I started reading documentation, started reading code, started understanding how it works internally. And it turned out that it's actually not fit. It's not my thing. You see, Hugin is great for certain types of tasks. However, I wanted something that's really lightweight. I wanted something that can easily run on Raspberry Pi or even something smaller. I wanted something that can be much more flexible. Yes, Hugin is much more flexible than IFTTT, but it was not enough. I wanted more. Basically, I was greedy. So I decided to take inspiration from Hugin and start my own thing. Now, something interesting. I want to tell you two facts about Hugin. Two completely unrelated facts, and I cannot prove they're related in any way. First, Repo, the company that released the XRP token, they use Hugin. They're using Hugin actively. And second, Hugin, completely unrelated fact, I'm reminding you, Hugin is great for automating Twitter bots. Wonderful for automating Twitter troll armies, Twitter bot armies. Hugin is just great for that. Now, these two facts are completely unrelated. I cannot prove any relation, not my problem. Now, back to PipeCash. So, I grabbed the central idea of what Hugin is, but removed a bunch of stuff that I didn't need. I removed the user interface, I removed the agent programming interface, because I didn't remove it completely. I simplified it. I removed a lot of the fields in it, simply because a lot of stuff, in my opinion, are repeated, are stated twice. And the only way to be used would be to reduce flexibility, which I don't want to do. So instead I made a much simpler programming interface, and then I started improving stuff and adding stuff of my own. For example, I improved actually I'm not sure I improved this because it's something I have not checked how Hugin does, but I made an extremely simple multi-threading environment, which means when an agent is a piece of code that does an action, when this piece of code receives an event, it is guaranteed single-threaded environment. This makes programming for PipeCash so much easier, so extremely easy. But I also added stuff that was not in Hugin. For example, I added programmable conditions, which make it so much more flexible to connect different agents. You don't need so many connecting agents between this and this, simply because the data is not in the right format. You can transform the data in between the agents themselves. The links can transform data. Now, obviously, to understand what the hell I'm talking about, you need to go deep into the design of both Hugin and PipeCash. But I'll have separate tutorials on that later. I'll have tutorials on how exactly to use PipeCash, how to use the user interface. And yes, there is a user interface, it's just separate. What else? I also made the events more detailed. They can contain more types of data. It's flexible. The templating language is much stronger, because the templating language that Hugin uses is called Liquid, and it's a great language for templates. However, I decided to use something much more powerful called Python. Yeah, the Python programming language is my templating language. Of course, this only works if the environment is trusted, but in my case, it is. What else? I added a graphical user interface separately from the Hugin program, which means you only use the user interface when you're designing your scenario, your program, your automated bot. But right after you stop designing it, you simply download a JSON file, because that's all the graphical user interface is. It is a designer of a JSON file. It is a very fancy designer with charts, with documentation, with everything, but at the end of the day, it just designs a JSON file. So you download this JSON file, you put it into the PipeCash program, and it works. It works, it becomes an automated bot, it does whatever you programmed it to do. And the design is easy. the design of such a JSON file is easy. The graphical user interface is easy. The whole idea was that it's supposed to be for non-programmers. Everyone should be able to just go out there and connect the dots. Okay, so what's next? Yeah, I crafted a specific license. I am a believer of licenses and patents and stuff, so I decided to craft a specific license because I don't want my work stolen. So it is pretty similar to the open source licenses that are available right now, with some conditions. The conditions are actually very loose. You're allowed to use PipeCash for any scenario that does not involve money. You're allowed to also use PipeCash for any scenario that involves any government issued money, any fiat. You're also allowed to use PipeCash on Bitcoin SV and on Bitcoin BTC. And this is it. Basically, while it's called open blockchain specific license, you cannot just call it the no shitcoin license. That's what I prefer to call it. So I had this license reviewed by Craig Wright, and I hope I didn't trigger him by allowing Bitcoin BTC as well. I like to think that this license is a challenge to the miners in Bitcoin SV, because it is designed in a way that it will acknowledge that Bitcoin SV is Bitcoin once Bitcoin SV has more hash power than Bitcoin. Right now the license says whatever has the most hash power is Bitcoin. And this means that if the miners mine enough, if the miners make Bitcoin SV big enough, it will become Bitcoin according to the license. And at that moment, Bitcoin BTC will have its license revoked. So this is a cool little secret I hid in the license. Anyway, so I had all of this planned in my head before the CoinGeek conference in London, for which I got a free ticket, by the way. I did. I was lucky. So I went there and I had a few t-shirts printed with the logo of PipeCash. Sometimes on the front, sometimes on the back, sometimes on the side. The whole point is, I wanted to go out there and show people, yeah, I'm working on this thing here, PipeCash. I wanted to make some connections. I wanted people to know that I actually exist, and it somewhat worked. I don't expect, of course, people to just pay attention all the time, but some key people actually remembered. So this is where we are now. PipeCash is actually pretty much ready. It's pretty much ready for the beta release, at least. I'm pretty much ready to publish something that works and let people experiment with it. And in the beginning, it's gonna be completely free. I'm planning, however, to have some business incentives later. Right now, I have none, but they'll come. So, what are the business incentives? What is the business idea behind PipeCash? Because so far it's a great tool, but it doesn't really earn any money for me. There are three main sources of income for PipeCash. First is that the graphical user interface itself, it is not free forever. The graphical user interface is a separate program. It is the designer of this scenario, the designer of the programs. This one is a separate program, and eventually I'm planning to, when I make it better, of course, to start collecting monthly fees for it, for example. Some way to take money from people who use it. Second business idea is that PipeCash is extremely extensible. It allows for plugins, for agents. Agents are the pieces that do the actions, and agents are technically also plugins. However, they're plugins on what happens, not on how PipeCash runs. So I have both. I have the ability to do both. And the great thing about plugins is that they don't need to be free. Yes, many plugins will be free, but there will be proprietary plugins, specifically plugins for more complicated stuff, plugins for integrations with specific companies, for example. If I integrate with some big company that wants this type of work being done, I can sell the plugin itself. Of course, that's not just me. Anyone can do that. Anyone can just go out there, write a plugin, and start selling that plugin. If everything goes great, eventually I hope to one day have something like a marketplace for such plugins. It can be integrated into the designer program, for example, into the graphical user interface. If stuff doesn't go well, I don't know, it will just stay as it is now. So, and the third business plan is integrations. Integrations and support, I put them together. Basically, whenever somebody says, okay, this PipeCash thing is great, I love that it has a free site, but I don't want to do it myself. Here is some money, code it for me. And code it for me is not the right term even, because there is no real coding other than the templates. But the whole point is, if somebody just wants me to do the work, I'll gladly do it. Money is money. So these are the three points of my business plan. And what comes next, what comes right after now, is looking for investors. I want to do this full time. I want to make PipeCash automation full time. And in order to do that, I need investors. Right now, I have a full-time job, and I spend my weekends from morning to evening working on PipeCash, and sometimes working on other smaller projects, but basically just working all day, 7 days a week. It's tiresome, it's exhausting. I want to get to a point where I can safely quit my job and start working full-time on PipeCash. And in order to do that, I need money. So if you know any seed funding people who are interested in Bitcoin SV, or if you are one of them, send me an email. I'll include my email somewhere here. I'll include it in the description. Actually, I will include multiple emails. The whole point is I need to make the next steps, and in order to do that, I need investors. What else? Well, yeah, very soon I'm going to publish tutorials on how to use PipeCash as it is now. Then, only then will come the improved versions, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.